Previously on Justice League. The Justice League, Justice League America, and Justice League Dark all investigated the mysterious item known as Pandora's Box. Meanwhile, a villain known as the Outsider was gathering every villain he could find for reasons unknown. During a final battle over Pandora's Box, the item was revealed to be the vessel of a portal to Earth 3, the home of the Crime Syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League. Sea King, a member of the Syndicate, emerged from the portal and dropped dead. He was followed by his fellow teammates, and it was revealed that the Justice League had a traitor among them. The Atom was revealed to be Atomica, a scientist from Earth 3 who had fooled Cyborg into installing an evil AI known as Grid into his systems. Grid gained full control of Victor's cyborg half and separated itself from him in one of the nastiest moments I've ever seen in a comic book. The Crime Syndicate then announced that they were in need of a new home, and that the Justice League's Earth will be it.
Hello everyone, my name is Kay, and welcome to Midlife Crisis, the show where I talk about every major DC crossover event in chronological order. This week, we are finally beginning Forever Evil. I hope you enjoyed that little intro I put together. The reason I put that together is because obviously I'm not covering the New 52 Justice League series on the channel. I read it in my own time, caught all the way up to Forever Evil, and decided to just create a little preview bit at the start to catch anybody up on what's happened in the Justice League series going into this crossover event. And we are going to be talking about Forever Evil for the next 8 weeks. I have 8 videos planned out. Much like Blackest Night, 3 of those videos will be about Forever Evil itself. Those videos will include the Justice League and Justice League America issues that tie into Forever Evil. There will be 2 videos that will cover the single issue tie-ins from throughout all of the DC books that were going at the time. And there will be separate videos for each Forever Evil miniseries that DC released, which includes Rogue's Rebellion, Argus, and Arkham War. I think I've been planning this out for at least a year at this point, because I read Justice League ages ago. I had to set out my roadmap for all of my videos. I had to flick through some of the singular tie-ins to see which ones were worth covering on the channel and which ones weren't, because a lot of the singular tie-ins are just villain origins. So I had to flick through them, see which ones weren't villain origins, see which ones were half villain origin, but also half stuff that was taking place during Forever Evil, because a couple of them are a mix of both. The only Forever Evil thing that I will not be covering is Blight. The reason why is because Blight doesn't really have anything to do with Forever Evil. It's kind of just the Justice League Dark doing its own thing. Maybe I'll cover it sometime in the future, but it will not be during this event. So, without further ado, I think it's time that we just get started with Forever Evil Issue 1, written by Jeff Johns, with art by David Finch and Richard Friend. The story begins with Lex Luthor talking about how, when he was a kid, he had the opportunity to save his sister Lena's cat, who was stuck in a tree, and when he tried to save the cat, it scratched him, so he grabbed the cat, and he threw it into the river, and he was like, it wasn't the cat's fault, it just didn't understand that I was trying to save it, and so I killed it. So we're immediately shown the difference between Lex Luthor and Clark Kent Superman. The reason he's telling this story is because he's trying to convince this man, Thomas Cord, who is the father of Ted Cord and the owner of Cord Industries. He's trying to convince him to sign his company over to him so that Thomas can have an early retirement with his family, and Thomas has no interest in doing this. Also, what's with DC naming people's fathers Thomas? You had Thomas Wayne, who was the owner of Wayne Industries, and then you got Thomas Cord, who is the owner of Cord Industries. Thomas has no interest in signing over the business, and so Lex just straight up threatens him without really threatening him. Like, he is threatening him, but he's like, hey, I'm not threatening you. I'm just saying that if you don't sign over your company, this helicopter might fall out of the sky, and you might be the only one that dies in the crash. Because, accidents happen. At this moment, when Lex is about to get Thomas to sign the papers, the helicopter starts to power down. They start to lose power because a weird signal is sent throughout the city, kind of like an EMP pulse that knocks out all of the power. The helicopter starts to crash, and Lex is like, "Pull up, you idiot!" And they crash straight into LexCorp. And at first you think, oh, Lex is the only survivor, because you see him, he's managed to get out of the helicopter as it's crashed, so he's only been minorly injured. He sees his phone, and on his phone, a message appears that says, "This world is ours." And we see that Grid has been in communication with someone and is saying that he's shutting down the power in all these different cities. He's just successfully shut down the power in Metropolis, and the person that he's talking to is now heading to Metropolis. Meanwhile, in Gotham City, Nightwing is dropping Zazaz at Arkham Asylum because he was just in Chicago for some reason, because that is where Dick Grayson is currently operating from. And he begins communicating with Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, about how Batman probably knows he's in Gotham City right now, but also Batman hasn't communicated with either of them in a while, which is a bit suspicious for him because he's usually keeping in touch quite regularly because he likes to keep an eye on them. But as Dick gets to Arkham Asylum, he suddenly hears a massive voice booming in his head that says, "This world is ours," that hurts his ears, and then he sees something shoot through the sky towards Arkham Asylum. This person lands in front of Arkham Asylum and rips the doors, metal doors, off of its hinges, which means this person is superhuman. And Dick is like, "Babs, we got a problem. I'm gonna have to fight this lady because she's trying to break into Arkham Asylum." But then he gets hit by someone who he thinks is Bruce at first, because this person kind of looks like Batman. And he's like, "No, it's not Batman." And the people that are capturing Dick right now and beating the shit out of him recognize him. But they say that on this Earth, he's Nightwing. They grab him with what looks like a lasso of truth, except it has spikes or little bits around it that kind of look like barbed wire, and they yank him away. Meanwhile, Lex tries to clear his head while somebody calls out for help. It's Thomas Cord. He's still alive and he's hanging on the end of the helicopter begging for his life. And Lex doesn't do anything at first, but then he sees the contract and then he's like, "Ah, shit, I gotta have to save this guy," so that he will sign the contract. He picks it up, he walks over to Thomas, but then a massive boom sound is heard as someone who looks like Superman flies through the city, smashing through buildings, and Lex is like, "Superman?" And then this person just smashes straight through the helicopter into LexCorp, which causes Thomas to fall from the helicopter. It also sends Lex flying, and Thomas falls to his death. He screams for help, but this guy that looks like Superman doesn't save him, so it's clearly not Superman. This dude grabs onto some of the doors of LexCorp and just rips them off and throws them out of the building, and then he starts using his X-ray vision to look around and eventually finds what he's looking for, which is kryptonite, and he's able to grab onto it and it doesn't do anything to him. And Lex is watching him do this. Meanwhile, the Rogues have arrived at Iron Heights Penitentiary because they want to free the Trickster, even though he ruined their previous plan. Cold is like, "We stand by our own, we have to save our own, so that's why we're here to save the Trickster." And then they get hit by something running at lightning speed, which smashes straight into Iron Heights, and they're like, "Whoa, is that the Flash?" And this person has somebody sitting on their shoulder who refers to them as Johnny, so it's clearly not Barry Allen. And the guard inside Iron Heights Penitentiary tells them to stand down, and he has his gun, and this Flash-looking fella just smashes straight through this guy, turning him into a skeleton. That's how fast he runs into him. It's really creepy. At least the guy had a quick death. And it's this moment that convinces Cold that this is definitely not the Flash. Meanwhile, there's a lot of meanwhiles because we got a lot of stuff going on. Amanda Waller is meeting with Black Manta to recruit him into her new Suicide Squad, but that is when an explosion goes off and two characters that look similar to Firestorm and Green Lantern enter the building. And they state that the world is theirs now. Back with Lex Luthor, he watches as this Superman lookalike crushes up the kryptonite and snorts it up his nose like cocaine, and he says that the kryptonite gives him power, unlike Superman. And that is when we get the reveal that this guy has a U on his chest, because this is not Superman, it is Ultraman, the leader of the Crime Syndicate. And he wants Grid to track down more kryptonite so that he can snort it and increase his powers. Meanwhile, at Arkham Asylum, the Riddler and Scarecrow are trying to convince the other residents at Arkham to join the Secret Society, because somebody has been handing everybody silver coins that are inviting them to join the Secret Society, and on the coins it says Aeternum Malum. The only person that seems to be not too keen to join the Secret Society is Poison Ivy, because she says that the Justice League will just take them down, and Scarecrow says that they won't, and so everyone kind of just joins, and Two-Face flips his silver coin to decide whether or not he joins, and I guess it lands on heads or whatever he made joining, because he joins. I do like the added detail of Two-Face only joining because the coin told him so. For some reason, some writers will forget that he always listens to the coin, and they'll have him not listen to the coin at times, which I hate it when people do that with Two-Face. It turns out the Secret Society are all meeting at the remains of the Watchtower, the Justice League's headquarters, which the Crime Syndicate have taken over. So we have all of these villains meeting there, and the Rogues are there too for some reason. I don't get why they decided to show up. You'd think that as soon as they were invited, Code would have been like, no, we're not doing that. I like how there's a guy in here who's controlled by Starro. He's got like a little Starro face on. It's like Starro decided to come to the meeting, and so he sent somebody in his place. Even the Suicide Squad is here, and they mention how Amanda Waller might find out that they're here, and Deadshot's like, I don't care if she finds out because she's not going to be able to do anything about it. Again, I think it's a bit weird that Deadshot wants to do something like this. He isn't really the kind of guy that wants to run with a crowd like this. Especially not the New 52 version of him. The villains are all talking to each other, and that's when it's revealed that Gorilla Grodd is here, so we're already breaking New 52 continuity, because we've been reading The Flash on this channel, and the last time we saw Gorilla Grodd, he got trapped in the Speed Force by Barry Allen, and Barry Allen said that he will never get out unless he wants him to. And so he's just here without any explanation as to how he got out of the Speed Force. There is a tie-in that does involve Gorilla Grodd, so maybe it will be explained in that, but if it doesn't, I'm gonna be pissed. Like, come on, Jeff, all you had to do was go back, skim through The Flash, and see what happened to Gorilla Grodd, so that you can at least put in an explanation like, I don't know, Johnny Quick, who is the Crime Syndicate's Flash, somehow got into the Speed Force and freed Grodd? Anything. Aquaman's trident is thrown in with the villains, and Black Manta grabs it and is like, yes, it's mine! Wonder Woman's lasso is thrown in, and Cheetah grabs it. Superman's cape is thrown in, Metallo grabs that, but then Parasite tries to grab it, and they fight over it. The reason why all of these items are being thrown in is because it's proof that the Crime Syndicate has defeated the Justice League. Not just defeated them, killed them. That's what they're trying to say. We have killed the Justice League. But not everybody believes them. This guy named Monocle doesn't believe that they killed the Justice League. He believes that this is the Justice League because it looks so much like them, and then he just gets blasted by Ultraman, and the guys around him are like, yeah, that's not the Justice League, bro. This is when the Crime Syndicate decides to show their hand with their hostage, Nightwing, they reveal him in front of everyone, and the Riddler's like, oh, hey, look, it's Nightwing. They took care of Nightwing. And then they take off Nightwing's mask, revealing his identity as Dick Grayson. They just reveal it straight up. They're like, hey, everybody, Nightwing is Dick Grayson. And then they put up all of his ID, the tragic accident that happened to his parents. Well, it wasn't an accident, you know what I mean. And they state that they are going to track down all of Dick Grayson's friends and family, and they will kill them one at a time. The Crime Syndicate says to all of the villains that this world is pathetic because it is owned and run by the heroes, when the villains are the real power of this earth, because to them, being evil is powerful, and so that the villains should all get together, take over the world, and rule it as they should. Aeternum Malum, which stands for forever evil. They say the thing. They said the thing. They said the name of the book. It's at this moment that the sun begins to rise, and Ultraman is kind of like a vampire where the sun hurts him. So he has to go and deal with that. And the way he deals with that is he pushes the entire moon in front of the sun, causing an eclipse. Lex watches this happen, and as he watches, he thinks about the cat, whether or not he should have saved it. Stupid cat caught up in a tree. This is a job for Superman. So where the hell is he? This is one of the rare times in Lex's life where he's actually wished for Superman to show up, and he's like, where the hell is he? He's supposed to be saving the world right now. Come on. I usually hate that guy, but now I don't. I'd actually appreciate it if he came and did something. Justice League, issue 23.4, written by Jeff Johns and Sterling Gates, with art by Szymon Kudranski. This issue gives us some more insight into Owlman as a character. While it doesn't really go into his origin story, we do learn a few things about his backstory and a bit about the part of Earth 3 that he came from, which is his version of Gotham City. The story begins with a family walking through an alleyway, a son and his parents, and they get held up by Harvey Bullock and Renee Montoya. Now, this is obviously supposed to be a red herring where you believe that this kid is Owlman. It is not Owlman. This takes place about a week before Forever Evil. Turns out GCPD is even more corrupt in this universe than it is in the main universe, so even characters like Bullock and Montoya, who are usually good, well-meaning characters, are criminals who hold up families, but this family isn't really a nice family either, or at least they're protected against this kind of stuff because they're just all holding guns. They reach into their pockets, pull out these guns and start blasting at Bullock and Montoya. It's so funny just seeing this kid holding a pistol just going... Bullock and Montoya try to call in help, but instead they get hit by the Owlmobile, which is being driven by Alfred Pennyworth, the partner of Thomas Wayne Jr., who is Owlman. So it's not Bruce Wayne, it's Thomas Wayne Jr. We learn through a monologue by Alfred that he was the one who killed Thomas's parents, and then they partnered up with each other after that. So Thomas was like, hey, you killed my parents? Why don't you help me take over Gotham City? I'll become Owlman, you become the Outsider, and we'll run this place. And that's exactly what they did. They took over Gotham City, they have control of the GCPD, and right now they are using it to try and track down Owlman's greatest villain, the Joker. That's right, on this Earth, he's just called the Joker. He's not called the Jester, even though that's what he's normally been called in other versions of Earth 3. I don't know why they didn't call him. It just feels a little bit, I don't know, exhausted of creativity when they were creating this version of Earth 3, where they just didn't even bother coming up with fun names for the alternate versions of the character, or at least most of them. Like, in this Earth, Dick Grayson is known as Talon, and he is still the partner of Owlman. But Dick Grayson went missing because he went after the Joker, which is very similar to what happened to Jason Todd in the main Earth. That's why Owlman is currently trying to hunt down the Joker, because he's looking for Dick, because he has almost like a brotherly camaraderie with Dick, because Thomas Wayne Jr. is closer to Dick's age than Bruce Wayne is. While the GCPD are chasing down the Joker, we get a cameo from this Earth's version of Tim Drake, who is looking at the cops and is like, yeah, they got the helicopters out. That's badass. The cops are bad guys on this Earth, so I guess Tim Drake is aspiring to be a bad guy like Owlman. And you would think that the Joker must be a good guy, right? But there aren't really any good guys on Earth 3, which is something I don't really like about this version of Earth 3. I know they want to go for this whole, like, morally grey idea where there's no good guys, there's just people who aren't as bad as the Crime Syndicate. But I much prefer it when the alternate version of the Joker is just a nice guy, called the Jester. The moment we realize that this version of the Joker is not a good guy is when Owlman finds Dick Grayson's remains separated in between a bunch of presents. So his body has been cut up and put in these presents by the Joker. So that is the moment when you realize the Joker might not be as bad as Owlman, but he's still a bad guy. Like, he's trying to free Gotham from Owlman's reign, but then what is he gonna do after that, if he's already doing shit like this? The Joker shows up and it's like, hey, you ready to play with some cards, Owlman? But then his fingers get blown off by Alfred, who shows up with his shotgun. This is very similar to Earth 1 Alfred, who will often have a gun on him when he believes it is required. Doesn't go by the same beliefs as Bruce. And Alfred asks Thomas why he wasn't around when Dick Grayson went missing. And it's because Thomas was busy sleeping with Superwoman, his fellow member of the Crime Syndicate. And he says that whatever happened to Dick Grayson is his fault anyway because he chose to go after the Joker. And Alfred replies, like, what happened to me is my fault, Mr. Wayne? And that's when the Joker shoots Alfred in the face with acid, and so Owlman kicks him in the back of the head because Alfred is the last person that Owlman cares about. And then, as Alfred begins laughing because it was acid mixed with Joker venom or whatever, Owlman goes over to the Joker, who is laughing at the same time, because he's like, look what I did to your partner, I fucked him up real bad. He goes over to the Joker, he picks him up, and he throws him off the building where the helicopter, one of the GCPD helicopters, is waiting below. And so the Joker just gets torn up by this helicopter. Now, I would have to assume that if somebody was thrown into the blades of a helicopter, that helicopter would probably crash to the ground, because I imagine the body parts and stuff would probably clog it up, but because this is a comic book, that doesn't happen. Instead, Thomas Wayne is able to cure Alfred because he just has a Joker cure on him. I guess he's prepared for this. And the cops decide that they're going to turn against Owlman now, because this is an opportunity to do so, because even though he has control of them, they don't really like him. So they start shooting at Thomas, and Thomas just throws a grenade at them and destroys them. The last remaining helicopters start shooting at Owlman, but then suddenly the sky turns red and these helicopters crash. We're not really sure exactly what this sky turning red means. It just means that the Crime Syndicate needs to find a new Earth. Their Earth is dying. I'm sure we'll find out what is going on. But as the Earth is dying, Owlman goes and sees Alfred, and he has turned into a Joker-looking... He looks like the Joker now. He's got a white face, red lips. It's at this point that the Crime Syndicate traveled to Earth 1, and while on Earth 1, Alfred went around and started recruiting supervillains for his secret society, and then they met Earth 1's version of Dick Grayson, and they kidnapped him, and as soon as Thomas found out about Dick Grayson, he started feeling guilt over his partner dying, and so the Outsider is like, he's gonna try and convince this Dick Grayson to join the secret society of supervillains. I'm going to have to try and convince Thomas to kill him instead. And that is where this issue leaves off. Overall, I didn't really enjoy it. I think it's a pretty mediocre version of Owlman. I think the previous versions that we've gotten in the past have been much more creative, especially with the differences between Earth 3 and Earth 1. The fact that they couldn't even call the Joker a different name, it just screams of laziness, like this was thrown together last minute. I would much rather this have just been Owlman's origin story instead of, a story that took place a week before Forever Evil happened. Because the book acts like we're supposed to care about Earth 3 Dick Grayson stuff, and we don't, because we've never met the guy before. Forever Evil Issue 2. Lex Luthor heads to the 13th sub-level of LexCorp because Superman is missing, and he has decided that it is now up to him in order to stop the Crime Syndicate, because he doesn't want them controlling the world, because he himself wants to control the world one day, and the world that he wants is not the one that the Crime Syndicate is trying to create, which is a hellscape of supervillains. And as he heads down to the 13th sub-level, he runs into Otis, who is a guard that works for him. He just doesn't know his name, which kind of shows that Lex doesn't really care about anyone that works at his place. They're all just numbers to him. And specifically, Otis is a reference to a character from the 1978 Superman film, where Otis was Lex's right-hand man, and he was kind of a bumbling fool. He was the comedic relief of the film. Meanwhile, the Titans are deciding that they're going to go to the Watchtower and try and fight against the Crime Syndicate to free Nightwing. And Tim says if they've already revealed Nightwing's secret identity, there's no telling who else's secret identity they're going to try and reveal next. At the Watchtower, the Crime Syndicate has a bit of an argument between each other. Johnny Quick wants to go out and have fun and kill people because he doesn't like sitting around. And Atomica agrees with him because they're in a relationship. Power Ring, who is the evil Green Lantern, isn't actually that evil from what I gather. He seems to be a guy that's doing this against his will. From what I can gather here, he doesn't actually have control of the Green Lantern ring. The ring has control of him, and it is hurting his body. And he works with Deathstorm because Deathstorm is, I'm assuming, Professor Martin Stein, because Power Ring calls him Professor. And Deathstorm has the ability to remove the ring from Power Ring, but Deathstorm refuses to and is like, you can have it for another week, and then we'll take it off. So I just feel bad for Power Ring, because he's going through all this pain. He doesn't really want to be a bad guy. He gets threatened by Ultraman, that Ultraman will rip his tongue out if he doesn't listen to him. Ultraman just wants them to stop arguing, so he lets Johnny Quick and Atomica go out and have their fun, because that way they're out of their hair. And then he learns from Grid that there is an uprising going on down in Kahndaq, which is where Black Adam is, and that Ultraman should go over there and check it out. Before he does, it is revealed that Dick Grayson isn't the only person that they have held here. They have somebody else whose face is obscure. We don't know their identity, but they call him a hitchhiker, which means that he probably comes from Earth 3. So we have this mystery person whose identity I'm sure will be revealed later. Ultraman wants to kill him, Owlman doesn't, and Superwoman agrees with him, and Ultraman says to Superwoman, if you ever agree with Owlman ever again, you'll regret it. So there's got a bit of a love triangle between these three, a very sadistic one. Grid then notifies Ultraman that something is going down in Central City. The Rogues are refusing to work with the Society of Supervillains, and so Ultraman decides to send Deathstorm and Power Ring over there to deal with that, and we will see what happens with that later. Owlman tells Alfred to look after their mysterious guest, and Alfred says that they were right, and that the Dick Grayson they have captured is not the same one that Thomas knew. It is then revealed that Superwoman and Owlman are secretly working together against the Crime Syndicate. Superwoman wants this world to be hers because she has a child on the way. And the child is Owlman's. Otis starts to get on Lex's nerves. He keeps talking about Superman and when's Superman gonna show up. There's no way he's dead. Lex is too focused on getting to his secret weapon, which he calls Subject B0. It is a clone of Superman, but it's not ready yet. It's been cooking for 5 years, which means he started making this clone back when Superman first came out to the public as a superhero. Because, you know, the New 52 established that all of the heroes have only been heroes for 5 years. Outside of the Watchtower, the army have arrived, and they're all like, we gotta be quiet, because we don't want them to know that we're here. And then this guy just gets blitzed by Johnny Quick. Just turns into a cloud of blood, and Johnny grabs all of the bullets from his gun and throws them back at these policemen and army men and stuff. And then the Titans show up and Superboy melts all of the bullets. And then Johnny Quick says, hey, look, it's your favorite, babe. Children. And I'm like, what the hell do they mean by that? Is Atomica who I think she might be? Like, are they implying what I think they're implying? Lex states that even though the clone isn't ready, the power is out, so he has no choice but to free this clone anyway, half-baked. And so we get to see Bizarro for the first time. That's why it's called Subject B0, because his name is Bizarro. This is the New 52 version of the character, and Otis is freaked out by it. And the first thing that Lex tells Bizarro to do is kill Otis. And it doesn't. It doesn't listen to him. And Otis is like, what the hell? And he's like, don't come near me. And he shoots the Bizarro. And Bizarro just kind of looks at his shoulder and doesn't do anything. And Lex is like, damn it, listen to me. Kill that man right now. And Otis is like, Lex, screw you. And goes to shoot Lex. And that is when a light bulb clicks in Bizarro's brain. Because Lex is in danger. He attacks Otis, grabs him by the throat, rips his throat out or something, kills him off panel. And I'm just like, what the hell? Why would you introduce this version of this character? Like, adapt a character from the old Superman movie and disrespect them like this by just killing them off a few pages later. Lex then goes and grabs a Superman costume that he keeps down in his sub-basement and tells Bizarro to come with him. The Titans fight against Johnny Quick and Atomica. Atomica just goes inside Cassie's mouth and stays in there for a bit. At first you think she's going in there to, like, fuck up her organs or something, but no, she just kind of sits in her mouth and watches as Johnny Quick fights Bartor. And Johnny does something weird with Bartor. He uses his speed powers to make Bartor go weird. He gets stuck in this weird tunnel of wind, which makes him all warped. And that creates a time vortex that the Titans all get sucked into, and then they are gone. They are out of the event. And this just doesn't make any sense. I know this is a comic book, but, like, where is the logic here? Where is the explanation? There's no explanation. Johnny Quick is just like, oh, I did this thing with Bartor, and now they're gone. And I've read the New 52 Teen Titans series. That series does not explain it either. Instead, we just get a couple issues of the Titans traveling through time, and it's written by Scott Lobdell, so it sucks. After this, Johnny Quick and Atomica head off to find more good guys to kill. Lex reveals to Bizarro that he has an armor that he was making from all of the different companies that he's acquired over the years, including Cord Industries. So we see Lex's battle suit. I like how he's talking to Bizarro, just like a regular guy. I guess he needs somebody to talk to. Bizarro, being Bizarro, puts the Superman costume on inside out, which explains why his ass is backwards. He also has a belt still, so I guess the Superman suit has a belt on the inside as well as the outside. Either that or Lex just gave him one to put on the outside, a yellow one. But yeah, we get a cool shot of Lex and Bizarro teaming up to take down the Crime Syndicate, and we'll find out what happens later. For now, we switch over to Star Labs, where Silas Stone, the father of Cyborg, is trying to shut down all of the dangerous equipment that they've got there because they know that eventually someone's going to come and try and steal it, and that is when the door is broken open by Batman and Catwoman. See, I don't get this. This is a metal door. They break it open. They're holding what's left of Victor after Grid separated himself. How did they break this door down? There's no bombs or anything that they got. He just kicked it down? What the hell? But yeah, Batman's alive. That's the reveal here. Batman is alive, and he needs Silas Stone to save his son's life because he is in critical condition. And Silas Stone is like, "You're alive. What happened to the rest of the Justice League?" And Bruce confirms that they didn't make it, according to him. Justice League of America issue 7.4, written by Jeff Johns and Sterling Gates, with art by Edgar Salazar and Jay Leistein. Now, even though this is Justice League America, it doesn't actually feature the Justice League America. This issue entirely focuses on Black Adam because it is set up for the next issue of Justice League. So, 4,000 years ago, there was a man named Ibak who ruled Kahndaq with an iron fist. Everybody hated him. He would walk around killing people until one day Black Adam showed up and killed all of his followers and then turned Ibak to stone. And Ibak is still kept in the museum of Kahndaq, and this guy is telling this other guy named Amon that he is a member of the Sons of Adam who follow the same beliefs as Black Adam, and he gives Amon a scroll, and he wants Amon to learn how to read the scroll so that they can use it later. The army appears, and the new leader of Kahndaq is just as bad as Ibak, and he's even named himself after Ibak. So these are Ibak's forces in the present day. So they arrive, and this guy is like, "Go and read that scroll, we'll take care of these guys, you are the hope for our future." Amon heads home in order to pack his things, where he gets into a disagreement with his sister, Adriana, who is a peaceful protester, because Amon believes that you can't protest peacefully anymore. You have to just use violence and stuff in order to win. This is a war, Adriana, and we are the weapons. So it's sad seeing this brother and sister split up for political views. Adriana heads off to do one of her peaceful protests where the military has stopped hounding them, and she's like, maybe it's because we're too below them, or maybe it's because our peaceful ways are finally starting to get through to them. But then somebody arrives, and he's gravely injured. His name is Karim, and he's like, "Adriana, the army's coming right now. They're heading out to the desert. They're gonna attack the Sons of Adam." And Adriana is like, "Oh, my brother is out there. Like, he's gonna be in trouble. I need to go and help him." And we cut to the desert where this member of the Sons of Adam, whose name I don't think ever actually gets revealed, states that the reason why they wanted Amon to read the scroll is because it is a scroll of the dead. And if they read it, it should bring Black Adam back to life. Because recently in Justice League, he was killed by Shazam. He was turned into ash because it was the only way to stop him. And apparently the urn that had his ashes in it was destroyed and spread across this desert. Adriana makes her way over to them just as her brother is reading out the spell to bring Black Adam back to life. Lightning starts striking out of the sky, killing people. She tries to get her brother to stop, but then a gun is set off, and it turns out Amon has been shot because the army has arrived and shot him from a distance, and so the Sons of Adam start fighting against them, and Adriana wants to take her brother to the hospital, but Amon is like, "No, you've got to finish the spell for me." And so while the army is just blowing people up, killing people, Adriana finally decides to say the final word of the spell, which is Shazam, and this brings Black Adam back to life. And then he just starts killing these army members because one of them points the gun at Black Adam's head and shoots him in the head, and it doesn't do anything. He's like, what? And then Black Adam just strikes lightning down, starts blasting through people, and Adriana is filming this, and she's like, wow, he's decimating the army. This is awesome. So she's already changing her way of thinking when it comes to war and protesting. The Sons of Adam say that they will do whatever Black Adam wants them to, and Black Adam is like, you are not servants. You don't bow to anyone. And so he heads off in order to attack the capital, and Adriana is like, wait, you can't just... You were right, Amon. We must be the weapons. And so she's just come to see Amon's views and has gone away from being peaceful and now is deciding to pick up arms and fight alongside everybody else. And it's just sad. It's sad that she ended up having to change her ways. Ibek's forces try to warn him about Black Adam, and Ibek just scoffs at him and is like, it's probably just the Sons of Adam. They're not going to do anything. But then one of his statues is thrown through the wall. It seems to be a statue of somebody who was turned to stone. I don't know if it's Ibek. He has many statues in his foyer that seem to be real people. And he starts shouting at Black Adam, and Black Adam just runs over to him, slams his hand into his throat, just killing his throat. He starts splitting out blood, and Adam walks over to the throne. He's like, you want the throne of Karnak? And he lifts it above his head and throws it down on top of Ibek, killing him. Here it is! And then he sits in what's left of a throne. It's like the wall where the throne used to be. He sits there. Karnak no longer has a ruler. She has a protector once again. And his lightning bolt on his chest begins to shine. And that is when he picks up Ibek's iPad and looks at it and sees the message, "The world is ours," from the Crime Syndicate. This world belongs to no one! And he destroys the iPad. And we will see what Black Adam gets up to next in Justice League issue 24, written by Jeff Johns with art by Ivan Reyes, Joe Prado, Eau Claire Albert, and Ebba Ferreira. We begin with the origin story of Ultraman, which is exactly what you would expect. It's just the opposite of Superman's, where it's just all evil and bad. Instead of it being the L family, they are the Ills, and they just suck. Jor-El sucks. Lara, we're not really shown her being terrible. We just know that she probably is. Jor is pretty terrible to her. Everybody on this planet is terrible. They're all killing each other, trying to get to a ship, and Jor is like, kill everybody, Lara, so that we can get our son Kal off to Earth, where he can take over Earth and be a brutish, horrible person, because that's what we've been instilling into him all these years. And as they send Kal off, he even looks at Kal and is like, oh, you're so frail, you sicken me. You better best yourself. You better be the strongest thing on Earth, or be nothing at all. And as Kal is sent off, Lara says, this is all your fault, Jor-El. And he just turns to her and is like, shut up and die, Lara. Like, that's funny. That's unironically funny. I don't know if it was meant to be funny. The ship just spends its entire time berating Kal-El, saying he's weak and awful and that he's worthless, and this is, I guess, them instilling these thoughts into his brain so that when he arrives on Earth, he will be a horrible baby. And they've also sent Kryptonite with him because it will empower him, and they tell him to stay away from the sun because that will depower him. On Earth, at the Kent farm, we see Jonathan and Martha Kent. However, because it's Earth 3, they are incredibly abusive and hate each other, and as they are trying to kill each other, Kal-El's ship crashes into their backyard. They head out to see what's there. Jonathan's got a knife. And they see baby Kal come out. He picks up a little bit of kryptonite. He starts munching on it. Oh, look, it's a little boy. And then they see his eyes start glowing, and Kal just shoots Jonathan's arm with heat vision, melting his arm, and he demands that they will be his parents now. And we get a little voiceover from Cal saying that they weren't his parents for very long. When he was 7 years old, they tried to escape from the farm, so he killed them, buried their bodies, and burnt down the barn. And then, since then, he's just been wreaking havoc across Earth 3. He killed the president. He started recruiting people like Hal Jordan. We get to see a little bit of Hal Jordan's origin on Earth 3, where Abin-Sur arrived and he had the power ring. They call it the power ring, not the Green Lantern ring. And you can tell he's in pain, and he's like, please, take it from me. If you take it, you won't be afraid of anything. So he's basically tricking Hal into taking the ring away from him. And we also get to see Superwoman, who is later mentioned to be Lois Lane, except it's also mentioned that she is an Amazon. So even though Lois Lane is her name, I don't think she's actually Lois Lane. I think Lois Lane is just a pseudonym that she goes by. We also get another mention of this thing that apparently destroyed Earth 3. They call it him. Still don't know what they're referring to, but we will find out eventually. And then they came to Earth 1 in order to take over it, which they did. And now Ultraman is heading over to the Daily Planet because he wants to see what this Earth has done to his former allies or the people that he worked with at the Daily Planet. At the Daily Planet, everybody is just trying to get the heck out of there because they're like, yeah, shit's going down. Crime Syndicate is destroying everything, so let's get the hell out of here. And Lois Lane is too busy trying to finish typing up a story, and obviously she's feeling depressed because Clark Kent is missing. And that is when Ultraman comes crashing through, and he's like, hello, Jim. Jimmy thinks it's Superman at first, don't know why, he's got a big U on his chest. You'd think he would look at that and be like, that's not Superman. Lois Lane has to tell him, it's not Superman. And Ultraman asks him what he is, and Jimmy's like, I'm a photographer. And I love this little shot where he just takes a photo of Ultraman, and Ultraman is just looking at him. He grabs Jimmy pretty forcefully and says, what do you take pictures of? Do you take pictures of her in exchange for favors? And Jimmy's like, no, I just take photos for the Daily Planet. And Lois starts screaming to put him down. You use your hands to take these pictures for the Daily Planet, don't you? And then Ultraman just crushes Jimmy's hand, which is pretty nasty. Lois again tells Ultraman to let him go, and Ultraman just grabs her face and slams her down into one of the desks. And Perry's like, Lois! And then Ultraman uses his super breath to start blowing everyone. A couple of people just get sent flying out the windows. They are dead for sure. Ultraman hears a buzzing sound coming from Jimmy, so he picks him up and he's like, oh, what is that? Don't hurt them, whatever you want from me, leave them out of it. I've crushed your hand and you're still worried about others? I'm very disappointed, Jim. And he drops Jimmy down, and he sees that the noise is coming from a watch and that it is a distress signal sent to Superman. But he's like, Superman's not coming. And then Lois comes up behind him, smashes her typewriter into his back. Get away from him! And Ultraman is like, oh, you're Lois Lane. You share the same name as Superwoman. Except you're not an Amazon. And I really want to rip her limb from limb, but I can't because I need her. But I don't need you, so I will happily rip you limb from limb. And she starts calling out for Superman, and Ultraman says that Superman isn't coming. No one is. And then Grid gets in contact with him and is like, Ultraman, we got a problem. You know that problem in Kahndaq? Well, it turns out the guy in Kahndaq heard that distress signal and he's on his way. That's right, it's Black Adam. And Black Adam just comes smashing through the Daily Planet into Ultraman, and he states that he knows the Crime Syndicate have come here. They've started saying that this is their world, but it is not their world, and Black Adam will show them that it is not their world because he is powerful, and he believes himself powerful enough to take down Ultraman. He says he's gonna rip him limb from limb, when he realizes that he can't actually do that because Ultraman is as strong as Superman, or even stronger because he's consumed kryptonite. And so Ultraman taunts Black Adam, saying, I don't break so easy, as he punches Black Adam in the face and states, let me see how long it takes to kill this one. So it seems like we might get a fight between Black Adam and Ultraman, which will continue into the next issue. I don't know how long it's going to go for. I imagine Ultraman is probably just going to kick his ass, beat him to near death. We will come back to that. For now, we are going to see what the Justice League of America are getting up to during all of this, with issues 8 through 10, written by Matt Kindt, with art by Doug Monk, Christian Alamy, Tom Derenick, Tom Nguyen, and Eddie Barrows. Martian Manhunter and Stargirl find themselves somewhere, not exactly sure where they are. All they know is that they seem to have a mental link with each other. John has connected their minds at some point without realizing. John then finds out that they must be in some kind of prison because he reaches out and touches an invisible wall, and that is when they come face to face with Jason Rush, who is one half of Firestorm, and he has been trapped in this prison for ages, and he says that he can show Martian Manhunter that this really is a prison and prove it to him. And he opens up a hatch and says, "Hey, John, come in with me, I'll show you what this prison is actually like." And John tells Stargirl to stay behind, and she says if he takes too long, she's gonna come in after him and get in on the action. And so we spend the rest of the issue with John and Jason exploring this weird prison where each room is made for a specific character and it is their worst nightmare. So the first room they enter is Wonder Woman's, where she seems to have slaughtered people. So already we've got a version of Wonder Woman that I don't usually like being depicted in comic books. She's fighting against the military because they're fighting against the Amazons, and she feels like she needs to, but she hates the fact that she's doing this, and she also hates the fact that she's becoming frail and weak. That's what she says, that she's crying, and I guess this is what her nightmare is this kind of scenario, so she just runs away crying. It's a pretty unfortunate depiction of Diana. I can understand where they're coming from here, but I don't know how well it works when the New 52 version of Wonder Woman was made to be a lot more brutal than the pre-Flashpoint version of Wonder Woman. The next prison they venture into is Shazam's prison room, where he is in a city where he can just destroy whatever he wants and it just bounces right back. So the child side of him has started to take over, the childlike wonder of being able to just go all out on the city as much as he wants and have no repercussions. So there's no stopping him. He just sees John and punches him because he thinks John is just another part of this world. And then he sees a giant robot and is like, "Oh, cool, giant robot. I've always wanted to beat up one of those." And so John and Jason have to then go off to the next prison room, which is the Flash, where Barry Allen is just sitting in this room alone, and he says to John that he's done so much stuff recently, and he recounts all of the things that he's done at super speed, but then he reveals to John that he did that all this morning. And John is like, "You haven't even left this room because we are in a prison." And Barry's like freaking out. So he believes that he's been doing all this stuff, but in actuality, he's never even left this room. And they venture into the next prison room, which is space, and John immediately knows that this is Superman's prison room, where apparently Superman's nightmare is that he killed someone and he's trying to reverse time to undo it. And so he will just forever be in this room, speeding around Earth, trying to turn back time, and failing to do so. The next prison room has Simon Baz in the crater of what I assume might be Coast City, or a city that he was in, that he completely destroyed, because his nightmare is everybody looking at him thinking he's a terrorist. Because if you know Simon Baz, he has an unfortunate history of being mistaken for a terrorist because of where he comes from. And so that is his nightmare, and he killed everyone for it because it got in and over his head. He was like, "I can't take it anymore, I can't take people mistaking me for a terrorist anymore." Courtney gets in contact with Jean and is like, "I think I found a way out of the prison." And she exits the prison and sees that the White House is burning and everything has gone to shit. And she's like, but maybe I don't want to leave the prison. Maybe I'd rather go back. After this, the story goes down a similar track where It is just John's going through the different prisons of the different members of the Justice League, while Courtney Whitmore, aka Stargirl, tries to follow him and find him because she's found an exit out of the prison. And the journey through the prisons brings John to his own prison, where he meets a copy of himself and his own nightmare, which is that of the destruction of his people on Mars that he failed to stop. So that's the stuff that goes on with John. The stuff that's really worth talking about is Courtney Whitmore herself, because it's in this issue that we are introduced to her origin story during the New 52. Because the interesting thing about Stargirl during the New 52 is that most of the stuff that her character revolved around pre-Flashpoint doesn't exist anymore on Earth 1, and that is the JSA. Pre-Flashpoint, her origin was obviously that her stepfather, Pat Dugan, was originally Stripesy, who was the sidekick of Starman, who was a member of the JSA. But on Earth 1, in the New 52, the JSA isn't a thing. They are a thing on Earth 2, which is its own Earth now, like it was many years ago. And that means her new origin is that she still has her stepdad, Pat Dugan. He was still Stripesy. Presumably, he was still the sidekick of Starman, even though Starman is never actually mentioned in this. And Courtney still finds Starman's staff and costume in a luggage box down in the basement that her stepdad owned. And she still puts it on. She still becomes Stargirl. Like, she flies around the city with the staff. It's just a really weird origin because it just feels kind of empty. Because we're just missing all of these other characters who were a part of her world and a part of her life. No Jay Garrick. No Ted Grant, no Alan Scott. And there's no longer a line of Starmen for her to follow. Like, there's no legacy to the Starman title outside of herself. She is the first person to take over the title after the last Starman, from what I know when it comes to the history of the New 52. It's while she's flying around the city practicing using the staff for the first time that she sees that there has been an explosion. So she goes over there to check it out, and she finds that somebody is attacking the city. He's set fire to a building, and they're like, look, he's over there, he's stolen some stuff, go get him. And she just shoots him with her energy. We don't see this guy's face. I thought that was going to be for a reason. I thought there was going to be a reveal that this guy was somebody specific. But as far as I can tell, it isn't. It's just a random guy whose face you never see. She knocks this guy out, and everybody cheers her and starts taking photos of her, and that's how she became Stargirl. In the present day, she continues looking for John. She finds John fighting against himself in his own prison and blasts John's copy off of him. I guess it's like a manifestation of his own psyche. And then she grabs John and is like, hey, John, I found a way out of the prison, so I'm going to take us there. And so she flies up into the sky with John. They blast out of the prison, but when they land, Courtney finds that John isn't there, or at least not physically. Turns out he's inside her head, and he says that. He's like, I'm here, Stargirl. It's John, I'm here, in your head. And then Courtney finds herself face to face with a group of villains, which include Deathstroke, Copperhead, Blockbuster, Giganta, and Shadow Thief. We learn more about Courtney's backstory, where her friend Tuan tries to convince her to become a superhero after she stopped that criminal the other night. He takes her to a costume store in order to buy a costume, and then she reluctantly goes out and stops another crime, and somebody films it. They upload it online, it gets millions of views, and Pat sees her watching this video and tells her that she's making a mistake. And she's like, oh, it doesn't matter what you think. You're not my dad, you're just my mom's boyfriend. And Pat explains to her that the stuff comes from his friend who had died, and that the world is very dangerous out there, and he doesn't want the same thing happening to her. And Courtney argues back, saying, then why are you keeping this stuff? What are you planning to do with it? Are you too afraid to use it? Because I'm not. I'm not too afraid to use it to stop crime. And it's at this point that we learn that Martian Manhunter is seeing all of her memories as well because he's stuck inside of her head, and he's trying to convince her to come to, because right now she is being attacked by a group of supervillains. And so he's like, you gotta stop thinking about these memories, Courtney, and start thinking about these bad guys that are fighting you and start fighting back against them. She's just getting the shit beat out of her by Blockbuster. And she's also lost her abilities right now, and because Martian Manhunter is in her body, she has his abilities, but she says that it really hurts her brain and her body using these abilities, and him talking in her head, it hurts a lot. But she kicks Blockbuster and sends him flying, and then flies away, and she tries to tell Martian Manhunter to shut up because she's trying to think and she can't think straight, and we see more of her memories where Pat is telling her that he's going to help her train to become a superhero, but until she's done with her training, she cannot go out and fight crime, and she has to promise not to. While this is happening, she's getting smacked by Giganta, just punches her straight in the face, and again, Stargirl has to reiterate that John inside her mind is hurting her, and we then cut back to a flashback where she's just got done being Stargirl, she gets all changed, she heads home, and sees on the news that there are reports on Stargirl. People have seen her going around stopping crimes. I don't get why Courtney is surprised that her parents found out. Did she just think that the news wasn't a thing anymore? like, of course, if they saw her, somebody was going to report it. It's not like she was trying to be secretive. She was just flying around. In the present, she gets stomped down by Blockbuster and then grabbed by Copperhead, who wants to take a chunk out of her, and Manhunter is like, you have my abilities, Stargirl. You need to phase. Let him pass right through us. And then we get more flashbacks of Courtney, where Pat is mad at her for using the staff and the costume without his say-so, because he wanted to train her, and he's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to speed up this training then. And then he finally reveals who his friend is, the one that the staff used to belong to, and it is Sylvester Pemberton, aka Starman. He never refers to him as Starman, he just calls him Sylvester Pemberton. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if there was a rule where they weren't allowed to actually say the name Starman at any point. I don't know what was going on with editorial, because I feel like if they were allowed to, they would have just said, yeah, he was Starman, but they never say that at any point. Courtney is able to phase through Copperhead and throws him at Giganta, sending her falling backwards. Blockbuster tries to attack Courtney, but Courtney is able to punch him in the face, sending him flying, and then she is grabbed by Shadow Thief, but she phases through Shadow Thief and fights back against her. She uses Martian Manhunter's phasing abilities to phase into Shadow Thief's frequency, which sends her writhing in agony. It's kind of hard to understand exactly what's going on. That's the best I can really explain it. And then Deathstroke comes to attack her, and Manhunter is like, we can't fight Deathstroke because he's too tactical. I don't get why Deathstroke is the one that he's most afraid of. When she was fine against Blockbuster, she was fine against Giganta. He just says, oh, because Deathstroke is really smart, that we shouldn't fight him, and that we should run away from him. Stargirl flies across the city, seeing everything in ruins after the supervillains have attacked it, and Martian Manhunter talks about how the prison that they were in is a moving prison. They were able to get out of it, but they need to find this prison. Apparently it's nuclear powered or something, according to John. He was able to get some kind of reading on it, and he also noticed that Jason Rush disappeared, so maybe it has something to do with Firestorm, because that was a little bit suspicious. The fact that he was in the prison and then he just disappeared. Courtney just wants to separate herself from John because she wants to go and check in on her family. And so John is like, okay, let's go over to Lex Tower, and you just need to calm down, and I will separate myself from your body. But she can't because she's too busy thinking about her family and her flashbacks and stuff. So she starts freaking out, and she's like, why are you acting like you know what you're doing? Like, I've seen your memories. I've seen what happened to your family. What did you do about that? Which is a bit of a low blow for her to do, to bring up John's family and be like, oh yeah, I get why you don't give a shit about my family, because you didn't give a shit about yours, because you didn't save them. She basically turns back against the adults and is like, why are you telling me what to do when you don't even know what you're doing? You know how hard it is to do the right thing? And she grabs John and just throws him. Like, she just grabs him, kicks him through a wall, and then she's like, you can go and find the Justice League if you want to. I'm gonna go and find my family and make sure they're okay. And so she heads off and leaves John by himself, and that is when we get the reveal of what the prison is that is holding the Justice League, according to John. It is Firestorm. Apparently, Firestorm himself, Jason Rush and Ronnie Raymond, they are the prison that is holding the Justice League, and they are currently counting down, which means, I guess, the Justice League are all trapped inside Firestorm and he's going to explode and then they'll all die. I guess we're going to have to find out what this all means next time, because that is it for this week's video. That is it for part 1 of Forever Evil. Things are already escalating a lot. I mean, we start off with the Justice League having lost off-panel, and I'm sure we're going to fill in the blanks of that as we go on. This last part of the story with Justice League of America, with Martian Manhunter and Stargirl together, was pretty great, and it was nice to get some backstory to some of the Crime Syndicate members and to see what Lex Luthor is currently cooking in the Forever Evil title. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens later. Next week, we are going to be checking out a bunch of the one-off tie-ins. And there's a lot of those to get through, so I hope you're looking forward to those. I am. I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these writers do with this new world that has been taken over by the villains, how creative some of the writers might get, or how non-creative they get. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and hype it, and I will see you next week. Have a good one.